Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare.
All right. Well, good to have everyone here, and good to have the out-of-towners here. That's wonderful. All of you online. We are in this stage of the path on karma. And, just a reminder, though this book is called Meditations on the Path, that's the complete path to awakening. All the key points. It's the structure of the path and what is utilized at different points on the path. And it's not that we shift our practice all the time. It's that we have a practice, we maintain a practice, which is foundational. And then each week we look at one point on this path. And so our approach has been to look at the meditation that's offered and have more of an analytical approach to it and understand it, talk about it. And then in our day-to-day life, kind of notice this. So each week then we have a taste of this portion of the path. And then next week another one. And the idea is that we'll get a full view of the whole path. And then that'll inform us as we engage in our practice. But then we always have a foundational practice, which really starts with taking some time in the morning to train the mind, meditate. We have these reflections on the rare and precious life and the four thoughts in general. And then set a real clear intention about how do I engage in this day, avoiding unwholesome actions, accumulation of karma that's unwholesome. How do I engage in virtue, being mindful, and then really paying attention to our interactions, understanding interdependence, my subjective experience, understanding the nature of how I exist, the temporary nature of feelings, how they get triggered and so forth. We understand ourselves. We have a vipassana practice. And then each evening, a little dedication of the good stuff, purification of the unwholesome things. Very solid practice. And so today we'll touch upon the purification practice. And so in the text, if you're reading along, you'll get some real interesting specifics on karma. And we covered sort of the basic what they call laws of karma last week. And then, we get very specific. And I think that can be actually somewhat detrimental when people get into trying to measure, I did this action, so it'll mean this or that'll mean this. And when it's much more integrated. And as we talked about last week, any event, anything that we engage in, there's a lot of intertwined karma, And so really, I think people try to micromanage and sometimes get very stuck. But if we understand the basic principles, then we're very functional. And one of the main things with karma is these aspects of what was the motivation? What was my motivation? Now I did something. And then what was the action? And was it intended or not? And was it completed or not? And then a big part is how do you feel about it afterward? And so we can kind of all get this, that if I yell at someone, I might have done it because I was scared and I yelled and I felt bad about it. I was reactive. Or I was angry, I wanted to yell. I yelled at that person, I felt pretty damn good. I put them in check, And go tell my buddies about it, told them, gave them a piece of my mind. No wonder you don't have so much of your mind left. I don't know what happened. keep giving it out. And so that karma is going to be very different. Same action, same words, right? Very different. And so of all, when we really want to think about karma, what we're creating here, Jetsuma Tenzabal is really good about really focusing on the motivation. What's my motivation? And that's going to be the biggest determinant factor is always our motivation. And a lot of times we're not even aware of that motivation, right? We do how many things a day? Not even paying attention, let alone being motivated to do something. Consciously motivated, that type of thing. And so just can we, as much as possible, bring some conscious intention to what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And if at some point, and we'll spend probably a bit of time at the retreat on this, of what we call clear comprehension. Clear comprehension. Version of that is what we talk about with 4 degrees of mindfulness, but really being present with what you're doing and why you're doing it, whether it's wholesome or unwholesome, and whether or not, how this relates to reality. And so can we have much more clear comprehension of what we're doing, why we're doing it, whether it's based in reality or not, and its effect on us and others. And so that's, it's a little bit of a skill to develop and maintain throughout the day, as we get distracted, caught up in things, forget where we put that, thing we just sat down 2 minutes ago. So, those things happen. But over time, we can become much more capable of at least being aware of why we're doing something consciously. And then notice maybe my motivation's not very wholesome. And so in the daily practice, the biggest things to be aware of is the 10 unwholesome and the 10 wholesome actions. Right. So I know all of you know those by heart. And I'm curious if anyone online, not to put anybody on the spot, might go through the 10 unwholesome actions. I'm picking someone online just because everybody could hear you better than if I asked this room who I know could just rattle it off, no problem. Anybody? You guys are awesome. So these are like the most.
Only if I could cheat. If I could cheat, then but then
not
going
cheating.
through one of the 10 non-virtuous actions, so I don't want to do that.
Yeah, not cheating.
The 10 non-virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind.
Without looking at a book.
Yeah, I can do it. I can do it. So body, it's no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct. Speech is no lying, no just pulling people apart.
Divisive speech, yeah.
Divisive speech, no gossip, and no. I always forget that one. I'll come back to it. And then the last 3 are no maliciousness, ill will, and no covetousness, and no wrong view. And the 4th one of speech is I can't think of it, but I can't think of it.
No harsh speech.
No harsh speech. Yeah, that's the one I have to work on the most. Sorry,
Awesome.
get it.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. That's awesome. And so these are kind of the things to bear in mind that this is the top 10 troublemakers. Okay, there's lots of things that we can do that, are not very wholesome, not very helpful, can create harm. But essentially out of what's supposed to be 84,000, this is the top 10. And if you can reduce actions of body, speech, and mind that are unwholesome, these top 10, and instead cultivate the opposites, right? Virtue, instead of killing, you're going to protect life. Instead of lying, we're going to have honesty and so forth. That's just going to radically change your whole experience. So, when we think about karma, it's really valuable to be real clear about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and aware of, is this detrimental to myself and others? So it might be good to know the list. I'm just saying. So in the daily morning practice on the guys, they are listed there. It's just, and it's not that difficult. If you just think of 3 actions of the body: no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, right? So try to protect life, right? Let's not steal. Let's really be healthy in our sexual interactions with others, honest, authentic. No inappropriate power structure in that, right? And then speech, that's a tricky one. Have a political conversation without divisive speech. So, and how do we come from a place of care and bring things up that need to be brought up with a heart of love and connection, even holding things accountable. Being honest is, one I think we all have worked with. So honest, we have divisive speech, harsh speech. And harsh speech is a little tricky too, because I might be able to say something smooth as silk, but I'm biting, just undermining, a little smile and, sarcasm, right? And versus satire. And there is a distinction there. That's something I always emphasize. Sarcasm is we're using her humor, but to hurt, right? Whereas satire is, a lot of times we're using humor to illustrate a ridiculous point, right? And that's not harmful, And so sometimes we think people are being sarcastic when they're not intending to hurt. Sometimes just we bring up the humor of a situation in a funny way. It's more satirical. But our words, how conscious are we? And so we've got devices being harsh speech. Yeah, we might be yelling out of love, to a kid who's trying to cross the street with that, and there's a car, we can yell, we can do some things, but we can also say some things quite politely that have some ulterior motives. And then the sort of gossipy thing is it's sort of idle speech, just talking to talk and maybe sharing things that are unnecessary. And that's also another balance, Small talk's very helpful. It's how we get along. Yes, yeah. But it's awkward when they do it in an elevator and you don't know them, right? So what do you have to do? I'm on an elevator with you. Yeah. So, just being, it's really more mindful of our speech at that point. Just being sort of mindful. Is it helpful? It's our motivation. Have somebody be comfortable. So basically, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, let's not lie, let's not be harsh with our speech, let's not try to divide people, spread rumors, have someone, and really with divisive, we're having someone think less of someone. We're in a friend group and, so-and-so's done this, and, now I'm thinking less of them. We divide. So then with the mind, ill will, do we wish ill upon others? Do we want them to get theirs, we were driving behind someone who was very erratic, right? Drunk out of their minds probably, or some other substance. And, Laura got on to call the local police, because, it was pretty radical right here in town. Not fast though, which was good. But yeah, it was an adventure. And so, but we're not calling like, I hope they get theirs. It's like, we want people to be safe. I want them to be safe, right? Get home. And so we might have someone cut, speeding and go, I hope they get caught. Well, why? So it's safer, or, I want them to get theirs. And so really watching ill will, where people can be held accountable, but we really want the best for them. That jealousy and covetousness, really just damaging, and then the last one is this wrong view. And essentially at its core is thinking that our actions don't matter, right? That there is no cause, result, effect. And so wrong view would be really on a what they call, they have mundane and ultimate and super mundane wrong view. But at its core, it's just basically in our regular day-to-day, really thinking that, this really didn't matter. And all it does matter, And we really want to hold that we're creating our own conditioning, and how I respond to you matters. How I engage with you matters. And so holding that, being very accountable in that sense, which also means how you treat yourself matters. So beating yourself up is not going to be very helpful, right? So as we go through this, we can all have a tendency of being micromanagers and then being too hard on ourselves as we try to be accountable instead of accountable in a healthy way. This is how I get to grow. I'm noting some of my behaviors that aren't helpful to myself or others I'd like to improve. And so that accountable piece, but in the spirit of growth and not shame. So, yeah, very valuable then if we kind of know. And as mentioned before, is if we think about motivation, if we're coming from a place of renunciation, loving kindness, compassion, or wisdom, loving kindness, compassion, renouncing delusional, independent self, and just wisdom, loving kindness, compassion. Pretty much everything we do after that's going to be good. The three root poisons are the opposite, right? Self-centeredness, self-grasping, misperception, attachment, and aversion. Everything coming after that's going to be contaminated. And so it's really empowering. I get to create my future. That's pretty awesome. How tough can that be? Just don't do those 10 things. Do these other 10 things. Pay attention. World changes. And you stop being around annoying people, and food tastes better. If you have an accident, you can roll with it easier. Some things happen. Some negative karma, got rid of that, feeling good. Very simple. Till you try to do it for some reason. And the biggest thing, and Jetson Tenzin Palma talks about this, is our biggest issue, the biggest obstacle, the most massive problem is we forget. That's all. I mean, I remember saying that in his thing, and it's just like, my head exploded. Like, we forget. Right? Even, I mean, I'm sure all of you really knew the 10 non-virtues and all that, but you were just teasing. But we forget what we're doing, right? We become mindless. We forget what we're doing. We forget why we're doing it. We forget how good it felt to do that wholesome thing that was wonderful when my body and mind wants to go do this other thing. I'm in this, I totally forget. And so this mind-body experience that we're having all the time, it knows how to get what it wants. It knows how to feel good. It knows, what doesn't feel good. And at some point, to be in the driver's seat, that's a very different experience. And to have the sensations and feelings of desire and attachment. And we may forget that, well, last time I did, I didn't feel very good about myself the next day or the next hour or whatever. I'm all in it. And I forget how good I felt when I really was showing up in a way that I felt good about for someone or something, even though it was difficult at the time. And we can also, have a nice morning practice, get all spiritual. Open that heart. I'm gonna go nail it today, man. And see every person I meet as an old dear friend, treat them well. 2 hours later, that idiot cuts you off, and someone gets in your way, and those freaking people on the customer service, they're not even freaking people. What the hell? Can't even get, and I've forgotten all that intention, right? And so remembering, so when we think about mindfulness, we may or may not, by the way, get to purification practice. Isn't that funny when somebody says, this may or may not happen? Like they have told you nothing. Right? And literally told you nothing. This might or might not happen. Thanks for the info. What do you do with that? Yeah, I'm always fascinated with how certain things that we talk about are words we use.
The weather,
The weather, yeah.
50% chance.
Right, 50% chance, right? Even if they tell you 40%, still it's like, it's gonna happen. Oh. But what were we talking about? Remembering. And so that is the ultimate sort of, when we think about definition of mindfulness, is a state of non-forgetfulness. A state of non-forgetfulness. That I'm able to bear in mind, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, or if there's something I'm focused on, to not lose that object. And bear it in mind. And so that is a skill that needs to be cultivated, needs to be practiced, needs to be maintained. And I don't know about you, but I need a lot of reminders. A lot of reminders. And so I know some of you do the morning practice as well, and you'll notice those 2 verses that we go over in each day, and how many elaborations can have on that. But the point is that I have a rare and precious life, right? More precious than a wish-fulfilling gem. So hard to get, so you only get it's like the one, so hard to get, so easily destroyed. It's like a lightning bolt in the sky. Contemplate this, and you'll realize all worldly actions are but wind of chaff, and night and day you must extract some essence of this life. So there's this really wonderful reminder. We have this opportunity once, not coming again, this day. And so what do I want to bring? What do I want to grow? What do I want to nurture? And what do I want to avoid? What are some of the habits I want to avoid? And someone asked me, like, what is Buddhist practice, or what is Buddhist? Simple question. And it's like, what is that? And there's many aspects to it, but one is very simple, and that is, in Buddhism, we seek to know what there is to accumulate and what there is to discard. Right? What there is to discard, what there is to accumulate. We seek to understand. And so there are certain habits and conditions that we would like to accumulate: healthy people, good environments, supportive teachings that help us engage in a path, mentors, so forth, and food, shelter, etc. It's, external, and then internal wisdom, loving kindness, compassion, wholesome activities, body, speech, and mind. And we have this lesson in the mindfulness program we have, the HAT, right? Habits, attitudes, and tendencies. Got your HAT, H-A-T, my habits, my attitudes, my tendencies. And so some of those are not very supportive. And, we go out with the wrong hat. And some of them are very supportive. So, do we have the right hat on? So being aware of that. So all of this is founded, though, fundamentally on a state of learning, but then applying, but not forgetting. Not forgetting. State of non-forgetfulness. And so that watchful eye of mindfulness is what's always kind of keeping us out of trouble, allows us to steer the vehicle that we're in, this mind-body experience. And I think we can all relate to the fact that a lot of times we don't have a driver, a conscious driver, we're just doing stuff. Right? Reactive, responsive, so-and-so hurt my feelings, blah, 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 so-and-so, it's really cool, I like them, they're funny, I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna watch one more little YouTube reel. I've been checking out those banana baseball things. Anybody ever watch that? Anybody know what I'm talking about? There's a whole baseball league where these guys, they do flips, they jump around, they dance, and they're playing baseball, and then they'll throw it behind. It's like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. You have all these little flips. They're very amazing. Not that I spend much time looking at them. I did notice them, and what happens, of course, once you look once, then they pop up, right? So, our mind can get easily entertained or distracted, and we can forget. Which there's nothing wrong with, admiring some baseball and think, wow, it's nice people can do that and admire that skill. What were we talking about? Remembering. Yeah, okay. So, just in a very simple few moments, and even listening to someone, we may find that we're not listening anymore, right? So really, if we want to be a driver in our own car, it's learning how to set reminders, how to build a good structure. We have a morning practice, we meditate, we start training the mind, engage in a shamatha practice that helps me notice when my mind has wandered, develop the muscle of bringing it back, being able to attend to it. And just that alone is huge. But now, what's the most important thing to attend to? Well, am I creating wholesome or unwholesome actions? Am I engaged in that which I should avoid, or am I cultivating that which supports who I want to be, how I want to live? What are the seeds I'm watering? What would I like to grow? And, that's just empowering, isn't it? We're the creator of our future. It's pretty nice. Until you look at what you've been creating. And then, but in fact, and it's the perspective that I think is so important, is that if you are, here on a Dharma teaching on a Wednesday night, you've clearly created a lot of good karma, and we're working ourselves, we're doing well. And so it's just continuing to nurture those qualities. And so, in spite of that, there's a possibility that maybe somewhere deep down you may have created some unwholesome tendencies. It's possible. In which case, there is a purification practice for that. And And it's one that's just so practical, it makes so much sense, I think, personally. And so let's take a look at that purification practice as outlined in this text. There we go. Well, that didn't work very well. All you see is Zoom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me try that again. I've got the page open. I go to share. I click on share. I click on the page. Ah, and it pops up. This is really a good first sentence. I didn't read that earlier. Karma is not fate. We are not doomed to suffer as a result of our negative actions. Maybe just breathe a sigh of relief. These can be purified with 4 opponent powers: regret, reliance, remedy, and resolve. These are primarily mental states we can generate anytime, any place. And that's the other thing to recognize. You can do it anytime, any place, anywhere. Each of the 4 purifies one of the 4 types of results. The power of regret purifies the experience similar to the cause. 2, the power of reliance purifies the environmental result. They're talking about the results of karma that would have resulted. The power of remedy purifies the ripened result, and the power of resolve purifies the action similar to the cause. So they did go over that a little bit earlier. I just didn't want us to get caught up in the minutia. There is no non-virtue so negative that it cannot be purified. It's a good idea to do purification practice daily, especially at the end of the day, to rectify the negative actions we committed during the day and to go to sleep with a clear mind. We can also purify negative actions we did earlier in our life. The following meditation explains one way of doing a purification practice with the 4 opponent powers. And so here it is, literally, like you can be purifying every day. And then it's nighttime and you're thinking, I'd rather have a chocolate eclair and watch something on TV. Or purify all the negative karmic imprints that you've created in your lifetime. It's a tough call. Tough call. I did say chocolate eclair, with that real nice cream in there. Yeah, custard, actually. I don't like the white cream. Yeah. And, so sometimes we might consider it. I mean, it may take 15 minutes. So the idea is that we can do some real mental hygiene and purifying. So let's take a look here. The first power is the power of regret. Now, some of you do Chenrei Sik with me all the time. I speak a lot about these 4. We do it in the Chenrei Sik practice. But it's always nice to hear it with a clear perspective. Regret is an intelligent recognition that something we did was mistaken, a cause of suffering for others and or ourselves. It is not guilt, an overly emotional reaction where we think we are permanently bad and hopeless. Regret is more rational and constructive. We feel remorse for the action because we see it as wrong, wish we had acted otherwise, and aspire to find constructive solutions. Generating regret purifies the karmic result as similar to the cause in terms of experience, having experiences similar to those that we inflicted on others. So that's kind of saying that if we do certain things to others, the experience will create a cause for us. This purifies that. So here we bring the mind to actions that we did recently or in the distant past that you recognize as unskillful or harmful. Reviewing the list of the 10 not virtues could help you remember any of these that you've done. recognize that these actions are the cause of suffering for yourself and others, both in the short term and long term, and generate a sincere feeling of regret that you did them. Reflect that if you do not purify these actions, the imprints they left on your mind will bring future problems and misfortune. They will also hinder your progress on the spiritual path and keep you trapped in samsara, forced to undergo continuous suffering and unable to actualize your potential for enlightenment. Recall your wish for happiness, spiritual realizations, feel that you deserve these, and resolve to purify the karma that prevents their attainment. So, you'll often hear me just say intelligent regret. And so having real clarity, real visceral clarity about this specific action we're thinking about, how it has harmed oneself or others. And really what arises is wisdom, right? Wisdom. I know that's not how I want to live. I know that this harms myself and others. And I'm understanding this. So rather than, shame, we actually get wisdom. We get constructive problem solving. We get an understanding, which is going to really imbue us with the opportunity to transform. So it's really a healthy regret, not shame, not guilt. Healthy wisdom that's in full accountability and understanding how these things harm ourselves and others. I'm going to pause there. It looks like Chris has his hand up.
Yeah, so I'm struggling with this because it's too much like confession and get out of jail free. The
Exactly.
yeah, the previous chapter talked about, karma is definite. It doesn't, it increases. And yeah, I struggle with the idea that, you do these actions and then you're good. I much more prefer the idea that, if I do something bad, or others do something bad, then there's gonna, that karma is gonna be ripened. So yeah, it just seems too much of a way just to whitewash and okay, you do these things, and I think you can trick your mind into having regret when you maybe don't have regret. So, I'm really, really never going to do this again. I promise, I promise, I promise. And you could probably pass a lie detector test, and then, the following week you do it again, and then you say, "Oh, I'm really, really sorry." It's just domestic violence or whatever. I mean, that's kind of a pretty magnified example. But anyway, I think you get my drift.
I do. Yeah. And, one of the I was raised Catholic, and we go confession, and you confess, and you do the remedial action, you're good to go. And so the actual spirit, though, of confession, and we'll break it down here in a productive way. But what you're bringing up is that we can feel like get out of jail free card. I can go to confession again tomorrow, and and so there's a lot of go to church on Sunday, be self-centered, do all the things all week, and then go to church on Sunday, get spiritual, do your confession, do your 10 Hail Marys, Lord's Prayer, good to go. None of that, by the way, would alleviate anyone of any of their sins or improve the quality of their life or move towards change. And it's not the spirit of confession, even within Catholicism. Matter of fact, in Catholicism, you used to even be able to pay people to do your penance. Yeah, right. So that was the whole big reform, right, that led to Protestant stuff. Since you're rich enough, you can pay someone to do your penance and stuff. You don't have to. So you could see where that could go awry a little bit. But what we're talking about here with intelligent regret, if we understand karma and its imprints, first off, when it says it's definite, what it's saying is unwholesome actions have unpleasant result. Wholesome actions have pleasant result. That's definite. How it plays out is going to be very variable. And if we understand that we're in samsara, why are we in samsara? Because of our minds, because of these imprints, because of our misunderstanding. But if I actually understood things, I wouldn't even be creating karma. And so it's much more a transformation of the mind that's taking place. And if one falls into the trap of thinking, oh, I can act like, self-centered jerk all day and I'm going to purify tonight. None of this works. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work, right? Because you're not approaching it with the mind of intelligent regret or seeing the harm. But if you actually do have intelligent regret, you will have a clarity of how these habits and tendencies and self-centeredness and grasping and motivations inflict harm on self and others. And when we do the practice ourselves, we even go a step further and ask ourselves to think, why did you do that? What was going on? Was there some fear? Was there insecurity? Were you just mindless at that time? What's going on? So there's some real searching, understanding, intelligent regret. And so you're really seeking to understand the very nature of that activity. And in that, wisdom's arising. So you're transforming your understanding, you're transforming your mind in that sense. And as we go through these other steps, we're going to empower ourselves to transform even that impulse, or that impulse to do that thing becomes an awareness of an opportunity to do something different. And now you've radically changed your option. As a matter of fact, you can actually use the harm to empower yourself in a more compassionate way. Yeah. But if we do approach it, as you're saying, with the idea that, I can just go through these motions, well, not only you're not purifying, you're creating a worse cycle of samsara for yourself, and none of this will work. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. The point is full accountability and a real commitment to change. That's where the power is. Let's see if I get to a couple of the others here. I know we're already at 7. So the power of reliance. For Buddhist, reliance involves renewing our refuge in the 3 jewels and our compassionate wish to benefit others and not harm. If you do not identify as a Buddhist, you can bring to mind another person or object you have faith in, or the personal values that you try to live by, which you transgress by performing negative actions. So it's basically restoring your connection to your path, the reliance in the path and the teachings, your spiritual journey. If you're a Buddhist, the relationship with the 3 jewels. But really restoring all that is that is your path, I think would be a good way of putting it. That really to be right. Focusing on these refuge objects or personal values, humbly acknowledge your mistakes, using your own words, speaking from your heart, that I want to be restored to this wholesome, pure meaning and purpose of life. Right? And forgiveness and guidance to help you to avoid repeating those same mistakes. So really seeking that. To rectify your actions that harmed others, remember that everyone wishes to be happy and to not suffer just as you do. Generate loving kindness, compassion, a sincere wish to only benefit others and not harm them. Remembering that the power of reliance purifies the environmental result of our negative actions, being born or living in places with unpleasant, unconducive conditions, or really that conditions of environment, will inspire you to practice regularly. Another side note just on that point, again with karma and seeds, and is results are not lost. When you're, the idea of burning a karmic seed, the seed's still there. It's just not growing, and it's not the environmental conditions for it to ripen are not there. Seed's still there. Okay, the power of remedy. This next of the four powers means performing positive, virtuous actions to counteract the negative ones that we've committed. One remedy is to recite mantra of an enlightened being such as Shakyamuni Buddhi. If you did the practice for Lam Rim meditation on page 35, you can focus on visualizing the Buddha in front of you, reciting his mantra 21 times or more. Very Catholic, right? Doing the Hail Marys and things, right? And recite this mantra 21 times or more while imagining light flowing from him. The light fills your entire body and mind and purifies all your negative karma, delusions. Other recommended remedies are to recite, study, or contemplate sutras such as the Heart Sutra. It's all about emptiness. Make offerings to holy beings, recite the names of the Buddhas, and create images of the Buddhas, or make donations. Actually, that could be a really good one. Make donations to the building of monasteries, stupas, or holy objects, right? So engage in virtue. And you want to touch on that a bit. It is said that you can use any virtuous constructive action as a remedy to non-virtue. So feel free to be creative. You could volunteer at a food bank or animal shelter, for example, or make donations to charities. Practicing the power of remedy purifies the ripened result of our non-virtues, taking rebirth in unfortunate realm in a future life. And so, what is it that you can do that you're going to feel good about that is going to be helpful, right? And so some people, struggle with the idea of visualization or a blessing or a mantra. And some people are very into it. I'm very into it, or prostrations or things of that nature. For example, we talked about it yesterday, right? If I'm saying a mantra, got my, let's fill over there. Got my little beads here. And get a quote, I think it's Lama Yeshe, could be Lama Zopa Rinpoche. There's nothing spiritual about these. Nothing spiritual about rosary beads. What makes it spiritual is what I do with it. What makes it spiritual is the meaning I bring to it. And I could easily take a moment and think about the efforts of countless others who have used beads like this in their life to invoke the greatest heartfelt intentions for others to be free of suffering, devoted their lives, maybe spent years in retreat with a mala, developing their hearts and their minds and sending prayers out that others are free of suffering, that teachings remain for others, that people are free of suffering. And then even the people that put these beads together and what their intentions were in their livelihood and how it benefited them, and all the myriad ways that these beads found their way to me, and why would it even make sense to me about these beads, and think about all the conditions that ripened for me to meet with a teacher to understand something about Buddhism and to have like even a teacher of mine inform me about how we can use such an item and how it can purify the mind, and all of his teachers and all the people that, you know, gave life to something that can bring such ripening to a mind. And then when I'm bringing to mind a mala and saying Om Mani Padme Hum, which is the union of merit and wisdom, of pure unification, of enlightenment, imagining all of those who have recited that over centuries, and the transmission of a mantra from my teacher to me through time, spinning around the heart for all sentient beings. Saying the mantra's pretty, you know, transformative experience, made available through the efforts of countless others I've never met, who through their devotion and prayers made it possible for me to even hold a mala, let alone think of its value, you know, or the answer to their prayers. It's amazing. And with that type of intention of ripening the mind and knowing that there's much more to life than this body, and all these that made this possible, and my devotion to living this life as fully as possible, as I say my mantras, you know, you can really see where there's a very rich, transformative experience. And but to some people, it's like, you know, that's just reciting things. And yeah, another teacher, I'm not going to name him, but pretty renowned teacher, he said, you know, he's noticing it, you know, just an old Tibetan selling stuff, you know, and later in life, people get kind of spiritual. They do a lot of things to purify. And he just saw her just doing it, you know, the whole thing, you know, all the time conducting business. And he said, you know, she must have turned that mala a few hundred times, but didn't turn the mind once. Right? So we can be doing the action, it could be empty. Or it could be quite rich. And so again, we're always working with the mind. And so really understanding that a practice that is going to bring our mind to really care and compassion for all others, a recognition of our interdependence with all beings, a ripening of the mind of wisdom or compassion. It's going to be an incredibly powerful remedial activity, because it's bringing the mind to this very ripened state instead of the unwholesome, self-grasping, self-centered state. So again, we're transforming. So it might be something like malas and prayers, prostrations, physical activity, food bank, and all that. You know, but really making it clear that I'm going to engage in this not merely for myself to purify, but so I can be a benefit to all. You know, really having that motivation. And then, you know, the mind's ripening. So if we understand, again, karma is not this and that. It's potentials. It's just potentials. And depending on the environment, different seeds ripen. You know, and somebody steals my cars, a certain thing that happens will allow a certain seed to ripen, which could be, you know, despair, or it could be adaptability, or it could be anger, or it could be, you know, whatever. So all the potentials are there, but the environments are there, and the intertwined karma. So we just, you know, which potentials are we nurturing and growing? And as we cultivate and grow and water these more healthy, positive ones, you know, they just override things. So really good to have some activity that you engage with that makes meaning to you instead of rote activities. And I do want to get to the final one, and we'll see about you, Nicole, if you're okay with that. Hit the share button. And then, this one's pretty straightforward. The power of resolve, which involves mentally promising not to do the same negative actions again according to your ability, to the best of your ability, right? This power purifies the results similar to the cause in terms of action, having the instinctive tendency to repeat the same negative action again and again. There may be some actions, such as physically harming others or selling illegal drugs, that you're confident that you can completely stop. So pledge to do that. I'm just not going to do that anymore. However, with more minor actions or those that are strongly habituated to, it would be not realistic to make such a promise. There's a good chance that you'll break it, and that could damage your self-confidence. Instead, you can promise to refrain from those actions for a certain period of time, if only for 1 hour, or even 5 minutes, or simply resolve to do your best to be mindful and gradually decrease doing them. And so again, we think about transforming the mind. This resolve is key, and that can be kind of wishy-washy, or it can be, we can beat ourselves over the head with it. Keep making this promise, and I keep doing it. I've been working on certain habits for 40 years here. I actually have, I do a daily sort of journal practice. And you'll say, day 1, again. I'm working on this thing, And here I'm 30, yeah. I mean, actively as a Buddhist, so more than 3 decades. And here I am on day 1 again, And I think it's important to do day 1 again. It's not time to give up, it's time to get up, And do day 1 again. And then day 2. I'm on day 5 specifically of this one. Again. And there's been periods in my life where it's gone for years and it pops up again, right? So, I have had stretches. But it's so important to make that resolve, to the best of my ability, I'm going to resist this. And so when I do my purification, I don't say ever, and I just say I'm going to resist to the best of my ability for as long as possible this activity. But really, I have, is those are on theory, it's like I'm putting a stake in the ground, like from this moment, And I might have to do it again. But the point is I do it with full force each time. And I don't ever want to not do day 1 again, you know what I mean? Like, to feel like I can't do it. And so that's really important, to have a resolve to do your best. And to know that you just keep getting up. Like I said, there's been years in this specific thing I'm thinking of. And then a whole little habit pops up. So when we think about purification in a sense, there's no magic that's happening in a sense. You are actually literally understanding your mind, understanding the habits, taking responsibility for it, and choosing to have a different choice. Choosing that makes sense, right? Choosing a different activity that would be more healthy and conducive. And it's really quite transformative. So in a Mindful Life program, we call it, what do we call it?
Transforming unskillful events.
Transforming unskillful events, thank you. So, and just very practical, transforming unskillful events. And you can do it all day, really quickly. It doesn't need, but it's the acknowledgement and the regret and the understanding and the resolve that it's really at work. Now, having said all that, if you can do this in a practice, like I said, that's been passed down through centuries, and invoke all the prayers and all the dedications and all the practice of all those people before you, manifesting in the state of like Vajrasattva and washing your body and be open to it. Basically, all that's there if you open the door, you know. You're still doing your action. You're still accountable. You're still doing that. But you are being open to an understanding of what we call dependent origination. And we exist in dependence upon all those actions. And you can actually bring to mind that you're going to receive, to the best of your ability, all the prayers of all those people before, all of the capacity of the Buddhist bodhisattvas, carrying beings, and all that, and allow that door to be open. And the force of that purification is not simply just yours, but all of their efforts as well. So really huge counterforce to unwholesome actions. If you can open your mind to that. Yeah. Okay. So Nicole, last bit, and then we'll wrap up.
In the power of remedy, when the part comes where the light fills your entire body and purifies all your negative karma and delusions, there's this thing in me that won't allow that. It's like, no, your karma and delusions are not going anywhere. And yeah, no, and is that my self-centered thought, or is that just, should I just forget? Should I just keep trying?
Sounds like pretty self-centered thought. Yeah, no, it's our fear and grasping and limitations of our conventional mind, right? And one of the, in this book, in what I just read, is to know that you deserve it. You deserve to be free. You deserve the change. And, just open your heart and mind to know that you deserve it. That just in this practice of opening and the desire to be a better human being is purifying. And that there's legions of people before you that want the best for you, and you deserve it. Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like honesty is kind of the backbone of these 4 R's.
Honesty, yeah, that's right there in the first point.
Honest with yourself and with what you can actually do and what you can actually accomplish, and I messed up, but I'll go back, and
Mhm.
It seems like honesty is sort of a big factor.
Yeah. So for those of you online, Maura was just making the point how honesty is all the way through it, right? Honest with yourself, honest accountability, some honesty with what you're capable of, right? But that's tricky because a lot of times we'll sell ourselves short on what we're capable of. And but all of honesty is kind of tricky, because we can rationalize things and so forth. But honesty is that which sets us free at so many levels and key to this whole process. Being as honest and authentic with ourselves. And going back to Chris's point, so many times we could heartfelt, make that promise, I'll be different, in a moment. And, but you don't even believe it yourself, And so having that clarity and that accountability, that honesty, is so, so important. Yeah, thank you. Let's go ahead and dedicate the merit, the wisdom, the time, the energy, our collective efforts for the benefit of all beings, so that somewhere in the future somebody's picking up a prayer or a mala bead and we help make that possible in a way that's meaningful for them. All right. Sorry, I didn't hit the share. I just clicked on the. Let me get back here, screen. Share. There we go. All right, taking just a moment to be in this moment, to recognize that our gathering together is filled with merit and wisdom. There's many things we could be doing on a Wednesday night, but we're here cultivating our hearts, our minds, in ways that we hope are productive, meaningful, are of benefit to ourselves and others, in eliminating suffering and cultivating wisdom. Let us dedicate this for the benefit of all beings, that efforts here find their way into the world in ways that are meaningful and productive, create an environment for others to be free of suffering, and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may continue to water, nurture, and grow the merit and wisdom that liberates us from all afflictions and allows us to ultimately recognize our Buddha nature and be of greatest benefit to all. With that intention, those who care to join me in the dedication. By this merit may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forever.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.